Hi everyone, this is Mason Stevenson, editor of the HR Exchange Network, joining you for a podcast. Joining me today, Parkland Health and Hospital System Vice President and Chief Workforce Officer Seb Girard. He's joining us here today. He's going to be speaking at the Chief Talent Officer Exchange in Orlando, and that's set for March 18th through the 20th. Mr. Girard, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Mason, and thank you for having me.
Sure. So you are going to be speaking on a pretty interesting topic at the event. That's going to be strategic talent mapping. So first off, let's just kind of get a general idea. What is that exactly?
So strategic talent mapping or strategic workforce planning is the art of looking into the future 3 to 5 years in advance about what could be the potential upcoming trends in the employment market, and within certain roles that you have in your organization, assessing what could be those potential future, what it would mean for your organization, and then taking action today so that you'll be fully prepared for those trends in 3 to 5 years. So that would be the best way to describe strategic workforce planning. Now, the way we're looking at it with Parkland, at Parkland, is we are enhancing it a little bit more. So we take talent mapping into three things, the past, the near future, and the far future. So for us, the past is labor optimization. So to be able to assess fully the future and predict what's coming, you need to make sure that you maximize your workforce today. So that's number one. Number two is what we call predictive hiring, which is a bit of a 6 to 18 months in advance about where do we think going to be our turnover? Where do we think going to be the high retention? What type of role going to be the turnover? And if even possible, who's going to be the turnover, so that you can do proactive talent acquisition before the turnover happens. And then the third bucket would be strategic workforce planning, which is, as I described already, the 3 to 5 years in advance prediction.
So a quick question to kind of draw it down just a little bit deeper. What is the main difference between talent mapping and career pathing? I know they sound kind of similar, but they are different.
Oh, they're very, very different. So career mapping is more where a role that have the right skills, where they can progress in their career, and what door can be open for the people working in those functions. Where talent mapping or strategic workforce planning is really what will be the impact of future trend in your workforce, and what changes can you predict, and then what action do you need to take to address those changes.
Gotcha. Let's talk about some challenges involved. This will be a two-part question. So with talent mapping, what are the issues that kind of keep you up at night, and then how do you address those issues?
It's a great question. So it's an art that is still not mastered in the HR world. So obviously we're still learning how to build it. There's other industry like sales and marketing, manufacturing that really master the way of doing strategic workforce planning. So we know it's possible. We know we can get there, but we're still at the beginning of it. So there's a bit of a lot of variable coming our way that we're still learning how to deal with. That's number one. Number two is how to not get lost into the details. There's a lot of things to take into consideration, and it could easily become cumbersome and prevent you to do it the right way or focus on the right thing. So I would say those two components is some of the pitfall in strategic workforce planning.
How do you address those? How do you overcome those?
So I think you cannot do strategic workforce planning for 100% of the role that you have in your organization. So what matters the most is that you focus on the role that your organization would not be able to survive without them. So I will give an example. If I don't have nurses or physicians being in a healthcare system, there's no way that we'll be able to stay alive. So it's very important that you take the roles that really matter the most for you. And don't get me wrong, every role is very important. But you pick the one that you cannot do without them, and those are the ones that you need to have conversation on. What is the function going to look like in 3 to 5 years? It's very important that you gather the brain of first some of the decision makers. So they need to be involved in the process. If not, they're not going to end up buying your plan. So that's number one. To also involve the people that are in those roles, getting their opinion, right? Because they know their job and they know what's coming better than anybody else. That's number two. And number three is that you keep a very open mind about potential disruptors coming your way. And by that, what I mean is Blockbuster never ever predicted Netflix. Or 2 years ago, we never even considered that we would have cars in the street without drivers. But those are game changers. So when you do those those strategic workforce planning, you need to keep a very open mind about what potential trend can come your way, disrupt the business, and then if there's anything you can do that could help you bridge those gaps and be ready when it's going to happen.
So let's say, for instance, I am an HR professional working for any particular company, and I really want to start pushing this concept of talent mapping and this strategy. From your perspective, if you were kind of guiding me, what would make for a solid talent mapping strategy?
If you're starting, I would really say start small, master it first, get the buy-in of the decision makers, so involve them, because that make a very big difference, and focus. So again, it's an art that you get better the more you're doing it. It's still a little bit alien in a lot of organizations. The fact that it's a look toward the future, it's very imperfect. So doing it small, maybe as a pilot, very focused, involving the decision makers would be where I would recommend to start with, to have it very solid.
You mentioned a few minutes ago, kind of looking 3 to 5 years out. Do you feel like that's kind of standard, or do you think there are situations where someone in the HR profession might look past that, or do you think going too far you really get into this world of not being 100% sure where your strategy needs to go?
It's a great question, and my personal opinion is if up till we get to the point to be very good at assessing 3 to 5 years ahead, trying to predict what 7 or 10 years is going to look like. Don't get me wrong. I think every time we look into the future with an open mind, it's a very good exercise. Right. So I would never, ever discourage anybody to do it. That said, what I would say to people is you need to make sure that your 3 to 5 years plan is pretty accurate. And once you get pretty good at that, then maybe you can push it. There's a lot that can happen in 7 and 10 years. The economy change. We know there's an economic crisis changes every 7 years. There's a potential change in political function every 4 to 8 years. There's so meaning legislation can change. So at one point, if you look too far ahead, there's a lot of variables that would just end up changing and messing up with the whole plan. So that would be my take.
Here's a question similar to that. For an HR professional, how long does it take for that person to kind of see if that 3 to 5 year plan is working out? Does it take that long, or are there some things on the front end that you can kind of see that gives you an indication of, yes, this strategy is headed the right direction, we are planning where we need to go, and we are starting to see success? Or is it a process of you kind of have to wait and see how it plays out over that specific period of time?
Thank you you for the question, because I should have mentioned it already. So I'm coming back to our enhanced strategic workforce planning at Parkland, where the first bucket is we maximize what we have, which is labor optimization. The second one is a 6 to 18 month predictive hiring type of concept, and then strategic workforce planning, which is a 3 to 5 years look. What we're doing is we go back to the plan basically every 3 months. So the 3 months is we make sure that we still maximize our labor optimization. We make sure that our predictive hiring model is still accurate for the 6 to 18 months. But doing so, we go back to the 3 to 5 years plan and then ask ourselves the question, are the trends that we were predicting, are we starting to see any signs that they are happening, or that this is what's going to, So basically we're having multiple pit stops. And the other thing is the 3 year or the 5 years plan is not set in stone. It needs to be very alive, meaning that it's okay that it changed in 3 months, because again, we're predicting. So if something was wrong, that's totally fair to scratch it and then replace it with what we think would be more accurate.
That was going to be my next question is, does talent mapping, does it allow you to kind of make those minor adjustments or major adjustments depending upon, what you're seeing as you're making these kind of pit stops down the road? I was curious to see if it was malleable that way, and it sounds like it certainly is.
And actually, I'll even push it a bit further, circling back to one of your question a bit earlier on. If your document and if your plan is not alive and malleable, I think that's a mistake. I think actually one of the recipe of a strong talent mapping strategy is that you need to go back to it very often, and you need to be open to maybe have done wrong prediction of having the wrong plan and then modifying it or tweaking it, and so not doing the pit stop would be the mistake.
So we'll make this the last question, and then we'll wrap up the podcast for today. So I think what HR folks really want to know is, what is that impact of talent mapping? What is the impact of the strategy on HR, and what is the impact of the strategy on, say, the business itself?
So if I go back to some of the three things that I feel make me lose sleep at night, which is employee engagement, retention, talent acquisition, and being very strategic. The impact is you can be ahead of the curves on each of those points. So I will give an example, and the healthcare industry and talent acquisition is not yet, I would say, very strong in mastering social media for recruiting. I'm giving that as an example. So part of the conversation that we were having 2-3 years ago was, our prediction was that 100% of the people are going to become a passive job seekers in the future. That was one of our assumptions. And then our assumption was the best way to attract best talent is to talk to people that doesn't know that they're looking for a job, but then they see something that attracts their attention, and then make them apply. And then our assumption would be that we increase the quality of all the resume that we're receiving. And in the past 2 years, so we implemented a plan of pushing social media, assessing all the results, etc. But the impact is exactly that. So right now, mastering the fact that we're like on Pinterest, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, we saw a huge increase of the quality of the resume because we end up attracting people that never knew that they were looking for a job. So in this case, the trend was right. And when we compare to all the other systems around us, we're way ahead in mastering social media, which give us a head start in attracting the right talent. So this is just a small example. I can give 5 more like that, but that's what it does, is it can give you that head start that's going to make you ahead, that will make you more strategic, that's going to help, building stronger relationship with the other departments within your organization, and just make stronger decisions.
All right. Parkland Health and Hospital System Vice President and Chief Workforce Officer Seb Girard talking to us about talent mapping strategies today. Mr. Girard, thank you for speaking on the topic. I look forward to seeing you and hearing more about this topic at the Chief Talent Officer Exchange March 18th through the 20th in Orlando. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Mason. Looking forward to meet you.